Okay, here we go. This is another chapter into the June 21st, 2020 eclipse. Taking a look at the transiting planets, which are the current planets up in the sky, and where they're going to connect to the planets in the United States birth chart. So here we have the chart for the USA. People have been studying this chart for eons before me. This chart seems to be pretty accurate. Apparently there's a couple of charts, but this birth time seems to be very accurate as far as events unfolding. And then after the events have unfolded, looking at the astrology behind it and seeing the cycles and the timing of those events line up. And then, of course, we have the pre-knowledge of realizing what the potentials and the differences of each planet and each sign are. So whether you're a believer of astrology or not, that's really not, I'm not here to sell it, even though I probably sound like I am, but I'm really not. It's more of, these are cycles, and if you want in on it, stop by, listen to it, and give me a thumbs up, or tell me what you think about it. Just engage in a way where we know you're out there, and welcome. Welcome to All Astrology. My name is G. I am going to be the person who walks you through this journey. The eclipse of the 21st of June is a conception point. It is a big beginning. I have previous videos out that talk in depth about the Cancer energy because the eclipse happens at 0 degrees of Cancer. That's when we have the sun and the moon together. Also, everybody out there, remember, it is a solar eclipse, but it is also the time of setting intentions. So having a real clear idea about what you want is going to be important. Want to have a real clear vision of that by June 24th, because Venus, it's her birthday then, and Venus is going to be reborn with a new value, with a new need, with a clear vision of what her needs are for her future. If there's something you're not certain of, or if I've lost you at anywhere in the process of all of this, make sure you're commenting below. Make sure you're supporting the channel. Released a video where I made an announcement. It's more like a game where it can help people stay engaged, reward those who are loyal, who are committed, who are genuinely trying to be supporters of this community. Let's dive into this. What we will emphasize here is that the United States ascendant/rising sign, which is always found on the eastern side of a chart. It is right there. It's where it says AC. That is your rising sign. The United States is at 1221. Now, everyone, the June eclipse, the June 5th eclipse, was at 16 degrees of Sagittarius energy. So that was about roughly, it was actually 15 something, okay? I rounded it up to 16. So this was like 3 degrees away from that. Now this is important because your ascendant is who you appear to be, all right? It's what you project to the world of who you are. It is your physical being. It's how you look. So when we look at the United States chart, isn't it a fascinating thing? I understand what Sagittarian energy is. Sagittarian energy is all about higher learning. It's wisdom. It's philosophy, it's religion, it's my spirituality. It is continuing education. Jupiter rules the Sagittarian energy. So to understand this even more, we then go and we find Jupiter in the United States chart. But before we do that, we're going to finish the meanings of Sagittarius. And the meanings of Sagittarius, how the United States appears to the world, we have been called a melting pot. Well, Sagittarian energy is the sign of foreigners. Foreign lands, it's the sign of traveling to other locations outside of my home. It is away from my home. That includes foreign languages. This is on the United States ascendant, folks. I'm not making this up. This is the thing. The ascendant looking like a melting pot. Lots of people speaking lots of different languages on the ascendant. Fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. So we look to the descendant. That tells you who your partner is, okay? Well, look at this, trade. Gemini represents trade, local trade, Okay? And that's what the founding fathers of this country were trying to do. They were trying to, when you read about the history, and of course, I do not claim to be a historian, so please give me some leeway here. My partner, who is the historian, is not present to correct me or to give you guys that knowledge. There was a series of merchants, right? They were businessmen that were here, right? It was after the first settlers had gotten through all the really rough times, got past the cannibalistic stages because they couldn't feed themselves, right? But once they got past that stage, they became merchants, right? That's how they could survive. So they tried to make sure that, it's like living in a pandemic. Think about that. You can't get stuff from overseas. So you have to learn how to barter and how to trade within your community. And that is what this is. This is business. This is keeping track of statistics and information. Gemini energy is talking, relating with my neighbor, with people in my community. And now, as time has gone on, this has taken a whole nother look. We've evolved. And so the astrology has evolved. And in that, this has gotten to the degree where we're doing this via the internet. We don't have to literally go out in our community, shake hands, and go door to door. We can connect with people without leaving our living room, without leaving the bedroom, right? I can be in the backyard, on the chair, in the sun, got my phone in my hand. I could be handling business like that. It's really evolved in ways that likely our forefathers could have never imagined, never have dreamed. It's a very much Uranus thing. Uranus is all about technical advancements for society. Uranus energy, by the way, is Aquarian energy, is the astrologers, but it's scientists as well, right? It is the astronomers. It is doctor energy. And so when you have Aquarian energy mixed with the Gemini energy, typically it's a signature point of a genius, right? Because Mercury rules Gemini energy, and Mercury and Uranus get along really well. So there's these great advancements for humanity. So this is on the United States descendant. And remember, it is business, right? It is business. So there's this, I want to trade, I want to barter, I want to, there's always this money factor involved, like what can we do, right? How can you make money? How can I make money? And boy, when we talk about the politics in the country, when we look at the history, when we, even look at, yes. Anyway, this is not a political video, so I'm not going to even dip into that. What else do we see? We see Mars. We see Mars, and Mars represents the militia. Mars represents the military, right? And look at that. Fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. When this country is known, it's infamous for having military bases all around the world, having military bases in their neighbor's backyard, right? And this is what the sign is. Gemini is your neighbor. Getting back to understanding this ascendant, it's Jupiter. And what does Jupiter? Jupiter's in Cancer, my family, my home. And so for the United States, let's pay attention, folks. The 7th house encompasses half Gemini energy, half Cancer energy. Okay? 0 degrees Cancer, which is where the eclipse is at, is right there, very close to the United States Venus. United States Venus is at 3 degrees. Now, the transiting Venus will have a birthday at 5-degree Venus in Gemini. And when she does, she will eventually make her way up to the United States Venus. And the United States will have a Venus return. And that will be this on a global level, right, for the country, this new understanding of what we value, who is in our bucket of family. So getting back to the eclipse for the 21st, though, the Jupiter in Cancer, there is this big over-exaggeration, because that's what Jupiter does, and emotions around what I consider my home and my family. Jupiter has a tendency to expand upon things. So there's no balance. There's no balance at all. And it's when we think about home and values, when we think about family, when we think about people's willingness to fight for their homes, to fight for their family, when we think about if anybody is putting someone who we consider our family in danger, the motherly instinct, right? If anybody out there listening is a mom, right? Comment below. What happens if someone's going to do harm to your child? What happens if someone's, threatening a member of your family? What happens, right? Which this is here. Jupiter in Cancer, overly strong. People are born into this world where they just have this unbelievable desire to have children. They have this all natural mother instinct of nurturing, of empathy, of sympathy, where they can connect with feelings is the sign of Cancer. Now, when we looked at the eclipse energy, right, we've got 0 degrees here, right? It's conjunct what I love. It's conjunct family, because Venus is at 3 degrees in Cancer. And 3 degrees, this eclipse is on the world axis. So what was going on, or what is going on? What will be going on? The world axis means it's something that will occur on a global scale, worldly scale. It'll be something that happens, and we will all know about it because it will be in the news. So when we look at the chart of the U.S., we can't ignore the squares to this 0 degrees point. And a square to the 0 degrees point, take a look. What would a square be? A square would be the 0 degrees of cardinal points. Remember, the cardinals are Cancer and Capricorn, Libra and Aries. Well, look in the U.S.'s chart. Their IC is 1 degrees. So that is a very tight square to the eclipse. And so we're not confused. The IC represents family, represents home. This is my home. This is Aries. Okay? Aries is fiery. Aries says, I'm going to fight. I'm not backing down. All right? And so when you look at the 1 degree point, right? You don't even have to have a planet there. It's the fact that it's the IC. Your IC, your descendant, your midheaven, right? The DC, the MC, and your AC, your ascendant/rising. Those are points, those are the angles in your chart that are supercharged all the time. So anytime when we say, look at your points, look at the angles, those are the angles, those are the points we're talking about. Your IC, your descendant, your MC, your ascendant. And the United States home was squaring this eclipse. So when we talk about, disruption, and remember who the ruler of Aries is? Mars. So we have Mars here. That's this is how we learn how to follow the energy. Go by the ruler Mars. Where's Mars at? In Gemini, in social media. And if it wasn't for social media, if it wasn't for technical devices, we never would have seen that video. We never would have seen how a man laid there on the pavement gasping. And then when the gasp became whispers, and when the whispers just became gurgling, we never would have seen that without Uranus energy in Gemini. We never would have seen that. We never would have had the proof. We never would have had the light shine on that event. But we did. And when we think about that event, and when we think about the June 5th eclipse happening here at 15 degrees, and then we look across, whenever an eclipse happens, it's not just at that point. Energy runs along a line of polarity. So if it happened here at 15, it happened here at 15. And at 15 degrees, it was very close to the descendant. And so communication and social media, information, the sharing of information became a key role in what's happening now in this country. What's been long overdue in the way that we think and relate and communicate with people who, here's the thing, folks. This is here. The only people who can say that their ancestors were born in this country, right, would be like full-blooded indigenous Americans. Think about that. And where are those full-blooded? Who are those people? The Native Americans who are in their own prisons called reservations on the United States property. These are people who don't have running water in this country. These are people who, if they want to leave the reservation, they have to ask for permission in writing before they are allowed to leave the reservation. Now, that doesn't mean that people do that all the time. I get it. There's a lot of gray area. But that's what's supposed to happen. These are people who are bringing up children on these reservations where they have technology and equipment that they don't even have. They have no access to this. They have no access, right? Very limited access to the things that were for advancements of humanity, right? Advancements that helped societies grow, technology, right? We have running water in our homes. These folks don't. Can you believe that? In America, people don't have running water? Most people think I'm probably making this up. Would you think that I'm making it up also if I told you that if I wanted to mail some educational things for children there, because I heard that in the schools there, they don't have the tools to keep the kids up to speed to teach them? Would you believe if I said that if I tried to mail something there, that they go through their mail, that they'll never receive what I send them? Would you believe me if I said that? Would you think I'm making that up? This is in America, 2020. My whole point of going into all of that was that this is about what we believe. And we are finding out the event with George Floyd and the fact that it was caught on camera and we were all able to be the witness. We all were able to witness what occurred. All of a sudden, everybody's like, holy moly, I had no idea. And we all know that's a crock of shit. We all know that kind of stuff has been going on behind closed doors, in the alleyways, right? We all know this has been happening, but unless it affected people we knew, unless it touched our home, we thought, well, what am I supposed to do? It's got nothing to do with me. So here's this big awakening. It's a big awakening. And this Cancer energy and this big square, my home, right? My partner's home, because the 7th house is the house of our significant one-on-one relationships. So this is people who I'm partnered up with in some way. This could be business partners. This could be marriage partners. This could be people that you just work with one-on-one in whatever profession you have. And it may not even be a profession. This could simply be people you're very close to in your life. So close that you're willing to compromise in ways that mirror what you see people do in marriages. And so it's home here, but it's also clashing with your home. And it's clashing with your emotions of those people that you know. But it's at the same time your home. Now, this is like me looking at the chart of the United States. This is not even your own personal birth chart and figuring out where do you fall into this, right? Where do you come into the game here? How do you play a role in all of this? But understand, this country is a melting pot. Understand that every individual, that every being that is here belongs here. Because we are a community of people who have come from another country. My great-grandmother came here from another country. That makes me the 3rd generation here. But how many people do we know where they're like the umpteenth generation here? Or some who are 1st generations here? It doesn't matter. So the older generation you are means you have more right to be here? Not according to what I'm looking at. This says this land is your land and this land is my land. So the eclipse energy triggered the home of the United States. Now remember, Mars is about fighting. Mars says, I'm not backing down. Mars has a tendency to be impulsive and doesn't think things through sometimes. Therefore, there are people who might have gotten themselves into trouble, right? Because they were so willing to fight the power. And there was this intense energy to do just that. So it looks as though there's a rejuvenation of this on the 21st of June. Eclipses, when they're exact, they occur months in advance, weeks in advance, sometimes months in advance. But we know that at the beginning of June, right, at the butt end of May, I remember because I did a video because things were really, really starting to get insane in the country. And I remember in that video, it was like, where's Mars? Because Mars is always triggering something. And that's what Mars was doing. Mars was triggering. But when we saw this Piscean energy, Mars conjunct Neptune, triggers the United States natal Mars. Okay, and so this was on the June 5th eclipse. Squaring 90 degrees away means testing. And if it's Mars squaring Mars, well, then it's a fighter over here and a fighter over here. And isn't that what we've been watching? People, right? Whether they represent the government, whether they represent the law, we see people who are doing mass rallies, protests. Yeah, a whole bunch of other stuff occurred, and there's a whole bunch of different layers of behind the scenes ulterior stuff that came into play, and there's a lot of layers to it, and this isn't about dissecting that. So the June 21st eclipse, we see that Mars has then already moved on. Mars is now at 25, 26 degrees, so it's gotten past the Mars squares Mars, which is good. Because remember, folks, Neptune is this pandemic, and it's not going away. And I'm going to bring this up again because in the United States chart, by the way, if I didn't mention all this, when I don't think I did, I've said it many times, but I'll say it again. This inner ring of planets in black represents the birth chart of the United States. The outer ring in green represents the current up in the sky planets and their movements. And they all move at different speeds. And that those different speeds tell you all about the different timing and the cycles of something. You know, like we know spring, summer, winter, fall. We know when we look at the calendar, they last a certain amount of time. Well, it's exactly the same thing with this. The trick is knowing the different speeds of each of these things that you see here, right? What's the speed of Neptune? What's the speed of Mars? So how long was Mars in Pisces then? You know, and then Mars is going to get to Aries, and how long is it going to be there? That's a whole nother video altogether, folks, because pay attention to where Mars is. It's a big deal for the rest of 2020 in this Aryan energy. Getting back to Neptune in this pandemic, this is Neptune. Neptune rules pandemics, okay? And in water, you know, again, very deeply spiritual, emotional. But if you look, this 21 degrees, Neptune's been sitting here for a while. Look what's opposing it. The United States Neptune at 22 degrees. It's very close to the same degrees. The sign of Virgo is your health, by the way, people. All right? And so Neptune clouds things. It makes things hard to diagnose. That's what Neptune's job is. It adds clouds of illusion and delusion on purpose so that over a long period of time, you will learn to see the truth. You know, Neptune's really idealistic. So best used, it's a very deeply spiritual energy. It's about sacrifice. It's about doing something and expecting nothing in return. But that can be abused when we take it to a level of action. It can become fanaticism, where we just go off the deep end with a belief to the degree where we're harming some. You know, and that's not good. But Neptune opposing Neptune, okay? The last pandemic in the United States, we had Neptune, the transiting Neptune conjunct the United States Neptune in their chart. Well, this pandemic was Neptune opposing Neptune. Opposing means at opposite ends of each other. What you also want to see is that there's, when we look at for a 90-degree square, 90 degrees, 30, 60, 90 is Mars in Gemini. And Gemini does rule the lungs. When we talk about the body, it rules the hands. It rules talking, thinking, communication. So our ability to think clearly is Gemini energy. And to talk, to speak, you know. So Neptune clouding that Mars, right? Clouding the thinking and the action, having clear action. It's a big square. It's a big giant T-square, we call that. all right, because it's 21 degrees. 21 degrees of Neptune in Pisces, 21 degrees Mars in Gemini, 21 degrees of Neptune in Virgo. A big T-square. And yes, I'm saying I'm lining up the transiting. That's the thing that makes astrology something you have to commit to, because you have to pay attention to the birth planets and the transiting planets, what's going on out here and then what's going on in here. So when we see the eclipse occur, we will have this point here. Now, eclipse energy creates a button, and this means that this will be a sensitive point in the US's chart for the next, this eclipse, I looked it up, this eclipse, the duration of this eclipse is 6 hours. And in one of the teachings that I follow, they have said that typically the power of an eclipse lasts for as long as the duration of the eclipse itself. And so when I went to timeanddate.com, they said that this eclipse, the duration of it is around between 5 to 6 hours of time. So when we talk about astrology and what does that relate in time-wise with astrology, that means 5 to 6 years. 5 to 6 years. So an hour equals a year. Which means this button, this eclipse point, will be active for 5 to 6 years. So that means anytime a transiting planet gets to the 0 degree mark, anytime a transiting planet touches on the IC of the United States, it's going to be extremely difficult. It's a square, and it's a cardinal square. This is a cardinal point. This is a cardinal point. The United States home, its inner emotional world is fiery, is watery. It wants to fight. It's impulsive. It needs to learn to think things through. It needs to consider relationships. It needs to learn how to compromise. But there's this fight mentality, okay? So if you have a planet that comes through here, it's going to trigger that again. But this point will always be hot. It will always be triggered because this eclipse occurred. And this makes this conception point where it will take the next 5 to 6 years for this virtual baby to grow and to be nurtured, for us to bring up as a community. This is what this is, folks. We are having a baby together, okay? And this baby will be born. This baby will be nurtured, right? Venus is there. What I love, what I need, what I want for my future, what I need for my future. How I receive love, how I give love. This is so important. Community, relating, understanding that all beings are divine creatures, all beings. And that there's one race, the human race, one family. You know the saying, one family. Humanity is my family. Now, this also affects the midheaven, because whenever you have down here, you shoot across the other side, and it's up here. The T squares up with 0 degrees Aries, and then it T squares up with 0 degrees of Libra, which is how I relate with significant one-on-one people in my life. So this is a hot button point that will exist for years to come. But look what's going to happen. Mars is going to be trucking along, and Mars is going to touch this point at the end of June, folks. At the end of June. So what this will likely do, because Mars is squaring, it's going to square this, okay? And what this means is that Mars is going to add test and stress. Mars wants to do something. Mars is about, I need to take actions. But it'll be squared by this eclipse energy. It's a stress and it's a testing. And so it's my fiery emotions. It's things about the home of the United States, squaring off with the same thing, the home of the United States. But They're partners even. They're partners even. Now, when we look at what Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter are doing, this is important. The United States has their natal Pluto in their second house. The second house is your income and what you value, your resources, your love, who you love, what you love, how you love. That's what your second house is. This is your money house. This is how, you make money, money coming in. This is the second house. This is your tangible assets. This is the second house. United States has Pluto at 27 degrees. United States recently had Saturn touching on their Pluto. United States, right, has a Pluto return coming. Pluto's at 24 degrees. It is conjunct Jupiter here. They are conjunct all of 2020. But when we get into July, Pluto and Jupiter, and I mean like the beginning of July, Pluto and Jupiter are like holding hands. They are on top of each other at 24 degrees. So if we want to understand what's going on in the U.S.'s chart, we need to see if there's anything going to square this. Is there anything that's going to square this? So 30, 60, 90 degrees away is a square, and Eris is at 24 degrees squaring it. Eris is the feminine energy. She is the feminine warrior who has decided she will be heard. She's done her time. She's sick and tired of being dismissed. This Eris energy is definitely a revolutionary energy. It is more than, and look what it's in, Aries, and it's in the fourth house, so it's home. It's like, you know what? Enough is enough. It's time for this feminine energy to set things right, which is interesting because it brings me back. What is opposing, right? That was the square. Now, we could also look for other squares, but in the United States chart, it's fascinating as hell because 24 degrees, look across the chart. What opposes it? The U.S.'s Mercury in Cancer at 24 degrees. So you can expect something more, an awareness coming about, something else coming about home, about family, about our country, ideally, and our shared resources, because it's in the 8th house. The things that we supposedly are shared, right? Isn't the earth our shared resource? We all live on the earth, right? You go somewhere, you see somebody's throwing something on the ground or left, like somebody was showing pictures of people after they left their spot on the beach and they just had garbage and litter everywhere. And it's like, hey, wait a minute. This is my land too. Like, I live here and I cherish the earth. I don't appreciate you doing that with our shared resources. I don't appreciate you littering the rivers, right? And so these are things that we value as a community, as a family. And so information, this opposition of Pluto and Jupiter together, folks, represent power and authority. And it's in Capricorn, so it's business, it's government, and it's something happening. There's big, deep changes happening in July. Big, deep changes happening with power, authority, responsibilities, big changes. We can't ignore that at 24 degrees this way, when we look for a square, is Spica. Spica is literally at 26, not 24. And so it's a T-square between Eris and Spica, Jupiter and Pluto, and then Mercury, which creates a great cross in the chart. A great cross is having 4 points that are 90 degrees away from each other. So you have the cross. Yes, astrology existed long before Christianity, and great crosses, you know, when they say, are you willing to pick up the cross? Seriously, folks, not making this up. So here's this cross at this time that the United States is carrying. They need to make things right. We need to start doing things right. We need to acknowledge life. We need to stop this patriarchal society that we're in. And that's going to occur. There's a lot of divine feminine energies that support a matriarchal uprising, so to speak. When the June 5th eclipse occurred, we had the transiting Mercury exactly on Sirius, and I go in deep about that in another video, but look, the U.S.'s birth chart, their sun is on Sirius. Sirius is the divine feminine energy. Sirius is this mother goddess energy. So downloads of information, downloads of understanding about nurturing, empathy, about love, about family, home, emotions, my children, the mother wound within the U.S., the mother wound within my family, the mother wound within your family. The mother wound is a real thing. My ability to be a mom, my ability to not be a mom, my thinking of, I never wanted to be a mom. And how does that feel in a world where it seems so many treasure and where that's their goal? The mother wound. That all the children of the earth belong to Mother Earth, are her children, and she feeds each and every one of us. So pay attention to where all these things occur in your chart. If there's any questions that you have, make sure that you comment your info with your question. Otherwise, we play a big back and forth game of, hey, I need this and I need that. And by the way, what was your question? Or did you have a specific question? Because as you see, there's 1,001 things that can be just, dive into anything. But having the sun at Sirius means that when the United States takes a hold and acknowledges this family, this nurturing, this empathy and understanding, this is really where we're operating best, because it involves shared resources. It knows, because of the fact that Gemini is in its 7th house, Cancer is also in its 7th house. So when all that June 5th, end of May and June 5th stuff started, it was, right? The 3rd house, because Mars was here at 8 degrees. Mars was like at 9 degrees, right on top of the United States grain, food. And it was receiving help. It was sextiled by Uranus energy. Uranus was at 9 degrees. And so Uranus, again, is technology, devices, right? 3rd house is communications, is media, news, information. And so Mars was getting help from Uranus, and Uranus is the awakener. As I need to shake up things, I need to wake you up. So when Mars was over here at 9 degrees, look what it did. It was an exact square to the United States Uranus at 8:55, which is 9 degrees. I had a person ask a question under one of the videos and said, well, where's the protest in this? First of all, there's a lot of different ways the energy can express. But when you see Mars in Pisces, angry and frustrated, getting a supportive sextile from Uranus, which is, it's time to wake people up about our values in Taurus, about what I love, who I love, and sends a square attesting to Uranus. Remember, Uranus is about authority figures. Uranus is about revolution as well. Uranus is about revolts. Uranus is about protesting. Uranus is, you know what? We need to light this candle and we need to start a revolution. That is Uranus energy. But there's so many other things going on. That wasn't just the one thing, but Mars is the activator. Mars is, so to speak, the person who's got the loaded cannon and they just need a light. They need that match to light the wick. Mars is the wick. Mars is, I should say, the flame that lights the wick. And it did. It lit the wick and it sent that beam right to Uranus energy. And so on the descendant, wow, that's what happened. And then days later, Mars traveled and got to 21 degrees, right? And got close to Neptune energy. And then we got people in the streets. Because this became very, very much about, I'm willing to sacrifice. When you look at this sacrifice Mars was making, and when you look at the fight and the frustration and this Neptune energy, look over at the United States chart. Look at the square. In my beliefs, in the U.S.'s belief. But look where the galactic center is. The galactic center is a point, okay? It's considered the source for our galaxy, the source of this galaxy. I know it's really like way out there. But Mars, galactic center point, anytime anything squares it or gets next to it, it lights it up. It lights it up. So beliefs being lit up and then realizing oh my gosh, I had this belief inside of me that I didn't really realize I was holding. Because when we see something, you know, we hear stories about things that happen. Like, I got a friend of a friend and this happened to them. They got pulled over by so-and-so and this happened. And in your mind, you're like, I'm so glad that never happened to me. But at the same time, everybody knows somebody that happened to. At the same time, there are people who are listening that it has happened to and had to have been feeling like, why does nobody care? Do people not believe that this happens? Or people know it happens, they just don't give a damn. But when it came to the light, what happened? People said, you know what? No more. There's a thing called race mentality. And it has a lot to do with this Cancer energy. Because whether we're aware of it or not, we carry emotions about things. They carry on through our soul in our lifetimes. And they carry over into next lifetimes. And so whether we are aware of it, there could be these hidden beliefs that we had. But we didn't realize we had them until this event occurred. Because these were things that we may not have necessarily done. Like, we were like, I've never done this. I've never enslaved somebody. I've never hurt even a fly. You know, I would never harm someone. But until we saw it happen, all of a sudden, it stirred something in folks, right? And it said, you know what? Enough is enough. Whether I ever lifted a hand doesn't matter. The fact that I'm not saying something is what matters. And that's why Mars and Gemini here. That's why this is such a big deal. This is why you've got folks, it doesn't, all over the world, doesn't matter what color of skin you have. Everyone is enraged because everyone understands family. Everyone understands that was somebody's family. Everybody understands there has been enough silence about the injustices of this world. And it is time to speak up. It is time to start relating. It is time to start sharing information about these things. It is time to put this on a scale where it is no longer hidden. And that's what this is. So for the June 21st eclipse, when I look at everything on the big picture, I can say, because the United States, I see the United States physical home and emotional home squares this eclipse point, that what we saw, that George Floyd and the days that followed, the mistreatment and the murder of a human being was attributed to this eclipse energy. So when we ask ourselves, is there another event coming on a global scale? What I am going to say is that something, when Mars gets here, something on a global scale will occur. Mars is going to trigger. Now, this is on the 28th of June. Mars gets to this, to like 20, maybe it's the 27th of June. But Mars gets where it starts to aspect. It gets close enough. It's within orb of 0 degrees Aries, because it's at 26 degrees on the 21st, right? And so we're going to see some more difficulty. It's not Mars squaring Mars anymore, right? Where it was fighting from here and fighting from over here, but now it's fighting down here, fighting at home. This is the people. This is my body. Anytime you see Mars or Aries energy, this is your body. Also remember, it's your head. Be careful, folks. Aries usually charge head first, and when they do that, they usually get hurt in the head, literally. And so keep that in mind. You know, it's the ram that puts the head down and just charges forward. Keep that in mind. Like, I have a lot of Arian energy in my chart, and I am prone to migraines, depending upon what squares it. So it's a very real thing. And for some folks, that can be actual injuries to their skull, you know, as opposed to migraines. But when we see the eclipse energy is feminine energy, Venus, because she's part of this, and masculine energy, Mars, clashing, squaring up at 90 degrees. So this is the divine feminine energy, and Aries energy is very masculine, without a doubt, okay? But this is my home, the masculine home. This is the United States squaring with my home, the divine feminine energy's home, in the United States house of significant one-on-one relationships, my partners, okay? So I hope this has put some light upon your path. It probably brought up 1,000 more questions. Please ask away, comment below, show your big support. And remember, we have this ongoing game, which is when I see who's being the most persistent, who is consistent, who is genuine support, who is commenting below the videos. And by their comments, I can tell they're watching the videos all the way through. It is your name that will be put into a bucket. Your name will be drawn, and the winning will be a free all astrology reading. So please do yourself a favor and be consistent in your comments and show genuine love.